I'm going to take you to a whole different place. Whole different place. Because here's the bottom line, folks. We're living in the Matrix. We live in a world of lies. It is damn near impossible for you and I to really understand what the hell is going on 90% of the time. Because they're lying to us. They're completely lying to us. And now I'm going to expose for you the biggest lie of all. You know what the biggest lie of all is? Is that we have a $37 trillion debt and that we're going to go bankrupt. Elon Musk was telling you, we're going to go bankrupt. Steve Bannon, we're going to go bankrupt. What's a balance sheet? Those of you who are in business, you know what's a balance sheet. What's on a balance sheet? It's assets and liabilities. $37 trillion is our liability. What are our assets? How come they never talk about that? Our congressman from a long time ago, Jim Renacci, I worked with him. There's actually an auditor general of the United States. You know that? A real person. There's a real office who looks at all of our assets. And Jim Renacci tried to get the Congress to have the president give a State of the Union address and then have the auditor general give a state of our finances address to the nation. They don't ever want him to do that because they don't want you to know the lies. They don't know what they want you to know what they're covering up. That's a brilliant idea, and we need to do that. You know why? Because we're not broke, we're rich. Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene expanding on that topic. I thought that's why I would bring it to you. Listen up.
Doge is great. I think Doge is great. Government efficiency is fantastic. It's exactly what we need, and the American people support it, and it must continue. It doesn't have anything to do with a disagreement on the internet. It has everything to do with the massive $36 trillion in debt. I'll go a step further on that. We can create here in America something called the American Sovereign Wealth Fund. We have over $200 trillion in assets in this country, all kinds of assets. And when you put that on a balance sheet against our debt that's $36 trillion, we could wipe out our debt. Social Security will be solvent. We could end taxes, and the American people could actually get paid because this country is so rich. And so this is something I've talked with the president about. I've reached out to Howard Lutnick about. I've talked to the speaker about, and I'm going to be pushing more and more because I don't think there's any need or reason for any of us to fight. We have to solve this problem, and an American Sovereign Wealth Fund will do it.
What is your reaction?
How do you like that? We have $200 trillion in assets. How are you broke? If you have a $37 million, let's say you have a $37,000 mortgage on your house and you have $200,000 in assets, you're not broke. You can sell your house, pay it off, and then buy another house, right? We're not broke. They only want you to think we're broke. But remember, Lutnick, go back. I posted the video in our video section at WeThePeopleConvention.org. Look at the Lutnick video where he's talking about all the things that they're going to do for you and me. And he talked about our assets because we have real assets. You want to see them? You want me to prove her? Prove what she said? Look at this. What is that? That's a map. The Federal Public Lands Surface and Subsurface Map. Everything you see there in red is owned by the federal government. Well, who the hell's the federal government? It's you and me. We, the people, own that. But they don't want you to know that. They don't want you to have that. They're borrowing money from freaking China when we've got assets sitting there doing nothing. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? So listen to this. Let me read this. The map illustrates the distribution of federal lands managed by various agencies, including Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service, National Park Service, whatever. Key takeaways. Western states such as Nevada, Utah, and Wyoming have high percentage of land owned by the federal government, often exceeding 50%. For instance, Nevada has approximately 85% of its land federally owned. Nevada, okay? Alaska, a significant portion of Alaska's land is federally owned, primarily managed by agencies like the Bureau of Land Management. Okay? How much oil, gas, rare earth minerals you think are on these lands? How much do you think there is? Why don't we just say we're going to sell whatever, 10% of our land, not to China, not to Russia, not to our enemies, to Americans, to American companies? How come we got a housing shortage, right? How come we don't do what we did in the founding of our country when we did the Western expansion and people got in your covered wagons and went west where they could get 2 acres of land if they would just farm it? Why aren't we using our assets? That's a serious question. We're not broke. We're not close to broke. We're being lied to. We're being mismanaged. And this isn't the only thing we're being lied to and being mismanaged about, okay? Let me talk to you about, remember I said to you that Donald Trump is literally trying to restore our Constitution the way our founders set it up. And I gave you a story just like 2 weeks ago. Trump administration violated impound law by freezing electric vehicle mandate, okay? And I said to you, this was a setup because the Trump and top advisors argue that the decades-old law is unconstitutional. The Government Accounting Office notes the Constitution specifically vests Congress the powers of the purse. And so he is setting up a constitutional challenge at the Supreme Court about impoundment, which has been used forever until Congress decided to handicap the president when Nixon was going down. The Democratic Congress passed this law about impoundment that said, oh, the president can't not spend what we allocate. He must spend every dollar we allocate. And Trump says, bull, that's not the Constitution says. And he's going to take it to the Supreme Court. Why is that important to you? Why is that important to our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity? I'll tell you why. Because guess what? We just talked about how no one in Congress has ever cut anything because it's a threat to their reelection in their mind. And we say, man up and don't be cowards. Have you seen it happen? Doesn't happen. You know what happens if we get impoundment? Guess who's responsible for the debt then? The president. One man or woman who we get to vote for. What would the world look like if we could say the president can control the spending, Congress allocate it? They could say, it's not my fault, he cut it. That's what they want to say, right? How about if we can say, hey, you came in as president, our debt was 37 trillion. When you left, it was 40 trillion. We're firing you. We're bringing somebody in new. Or how about if it started 37 trillion and it's now 32 trillion and we like what you're doing, keep it up? What would it look like as far as representative government from the standpoint of our tax dollars if the president was responsible for our debt? How about that? You think big things are happening? Oh, baby. This is a total remake. This is a reset of our whole form of government that gets rid of the stupidity and the undermining that centuries of lawyers have done to undermine every part of our process. That's why they won't do regular order. That's the only representation you have when you elect your congressman and senator is when they do the budget, because the power of the purse, right? And they're supposed to meet in their committees, the Energy Committee, the Defense Committee, whatever, and they're supposed to do the budget for each committee because that's where they can vote and make a difference and represent you. But they never do it. They haven't done it in 25 years. You know why? They don't want to be responsible. They don't want to cut anything. They want to give away goodies. So what do you have? It's an omnibus bill. Hey, can't blame me. I'm only one vote. I didn't like these 27 things, but, it's in the bill. What can I tell you? Yeah, you could have said that you were in committee and you killed those 27 things in your committee, but you won't. We're broken. Impoundment is the fix. Taking our assets and paying off our debt would change the freaking world. You want to have the U.S. as the reserve currency for the next 1,000 years? Yeah. Let's start using our assets for the American people as Marjorie Taylor Greene does. So maybe you ought to share that video with your congressman and with your senator. Maybe you ought to write to President Trump and say, we want you to sell our assets to pay our debt and stop borrowing. That's an ask. We'll put that in on our podcast page, okay? All right. How's that for a pretty heavy hitting start? All right? Pretty cool.